This episode of the Popture podcast was brought to you by our Patreon. If you want to tell us which films we should watch, get up to 2 extra exclusive podcasts a month, give us something to talk about in the post-credit scenes at the end of each episode, or even contribute to the discussion in the episode itself, then please consider joining the cult and donating at www.patreon.com/cultpopture.
Hello and welcome to part 2 of our Netflixmas discussion. Now I know you were thinking, Netflixmas, Richard, that's not a word. It's not, you're right. It's what's called a portmanteau, which is a combination of 2 words.
Do you know that a portmanteau in itself is a portmanteau?
Of poor man's toes?
Mm.
Yeah, that's exactly how a portmanteau works. And yeah, that is what it is. No, it's a guy named Port and a guy named Manto or something like that. Who cares?
Yeah, who cares? I think...
Guys, I'm not appreciating the energy that the two of you are bringing into this pod.
I just think it's worth, like...
I've just been doing Netflixmas shopping all day.
Saying who cares is like, what a vibe. You know, like I've never felt so represented by you, AJ.
Well, good. Welcome, everybody, to the Popture podcast. As Richard said, we're continuing on with our slog through Netflixmas 2021, or at least what we can get our little hands on for Netflixmas 21.
Our tiny little boy hands.
Which, if you've never heard before, is when every Christmas since 2017, Netflix either commissions or buys a bunch of often very shitty Christmas films and puts them up. And we watch as many as we can and talk about them. So go listen to the last Netflixmas episode if you want the full 2021 experience. I listened back to the 2019 episode last night. Probably, I think, the best Netflixmas ever. There was some bad films, but there was also films of a caliber we'll never see in our lives again.
Well, yeah, obviously there was the fact that one of them was half decent, which is
never see that caliber again.
A peak we've yet to scratch.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting in that was that was the second time. So the first time we ever did Netflixmas was 2018, and the second time we did it, we were like, "Oh my god!" And this year there's 6 films. There's too many for. There's 2 more than last year. And what's next? 8 films? What are we on this year? Like, overall, how many Netflixmas films are there this year?
It would depend on how you count it. There's up to 14.
Up to 4. Isn't that interesting? That it's just stupid, isn't it? And I think that the on this podcast, I made a comment of there was something to the likes of like, it is unsustainable for us to keep doing this year if they're going to keep increasing the amount of films. And here we are.
Yeah. So the up to 14 includes one that's like not clear if it came out this year or last year, but I think it came out last year, called The Claus Family. Mm-hmm. There's a couple of like Netflix exclusives that aren't exclusive in every region, short films, etc. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so last week we talked about the first 4, which was Love Hard, Father Christmas is Back, Princess Switch 3, Romancing the Star, and Robin, which was a TV special. It was only about 30 minutes. And then, as we sort of promised you guys last week, we talked about the next 4, which was A Boy Called Christmas, A Castle for Christmas, Single All the Way, and David and the Elves. We also mentioned Shaun the Sheep, The Flight Before Christmas, which, is a Netflix original in some regions, not in New Zealand, apparently. So, it's not on Netflix yet, so we couldn't cover it. But obviously, you got a few sort of the rom-com, the Hallmark sort of style ones, which Netflix has kind of made their brand for Christmas. And then you've got like a foreign film, which we've had some fun with in the past. But then obviously they've got their big blockbuster of the year. In previous years, this has been Christmas Chronicles. This has been Jingle Jangle, and this year it's a film called A Boy Called Christmas. And all 3 of us we saw this was playing in cinemas, but we were like, well, wouldn't I've got it on Netflix, and then you open Netflix any time of day, and the featured film that it aggressively markets to you,
just auto playing
plays
into my
you
eyeballs.
the trailer. Was this film A Boy Called Christmas?
Watch it now,
so,
Jeremy. We've selected this for you. The algorithm knows.
Even though it was the first film of this batch released, we all decided to leave it to last. I think we just wanted to save
the dessert, right?
Like genuinely,
save the feature film,
the one the one that's actually a film. We were like, well, let's leave this to last. And then
last night,
to my abject horror, I opened my Netflix app. I typed in A Boy Called Christmas, and Netflix suggested that I explore titles related to A Boy Called Christmas, but didn't give me the option of watching A Boy Called Christmas.
Weirdly, it offered me up A Castle for Christmas, a film which I should add, Netflix knows I've already watched.
And didn't like.
No, fuck that.
For some reason, and I verified this with listeners and with friends overseas, that A Boy Called Christmas is still available on all of your Netflixes, but in some sort of Christmas miracle, it was taken off Netflix in New Zealand. I tweeted them to try and find out why. I presume it's some kind of
listeners, error. Richard did the work.
But I put in the mahi, as people would say.
And I think the thing is, so we haven't watched it. We didn't go out of our way to find like a copy of it.
I was getting to that. We didn't go to the movies.
No.
We are out of lockdown here at Auckland, but it's still not safe.
June. I haven't seen Bond. I'm not making my first trip to the movies A Boy Called Christmas.
No, but you could, there are other ways we could procure a movie that is streaming in other countries.
Well, I don't even want to entertain those ideas
because
AJ.
It's Netflixmas, AJ. It's not watchseries.netmas.
But you don't tell me off. I was leading to this point. I was saying
AJ tried to get us to pirate it, but we said no.
I didn't even suggest that. I'm saying that in the spirit of Netflixmas, we decided that fuck it. If it's not on Netflix in New Zealand, we're not going to watch it for Netflixmas.
It's not part of it. Yeah. So like Netflix.
You're done fucked up.
We're doing this on Netflix's terms, and if they want to remove one of the films, that's their modus operandi, and we can't stand for that.
Look, Santa is the one who puts the gifts under the tree, and we can't tell Santa that he should have put a different gift under the tree, right?
Yeah. I hadn't watched any trailers or anything like that for A Boy Called Christmas, so. Yeah. I did think, we could have a sort of fun speculation as to what it would be about. But as Jeremy and I were sitting here waiting for you to send us a link to the Zoom call, AJ, I said we should pull up the trailer. And I skipped to about 6 different parts in it. And I saw Dame Maggie Smith. I saw Jim Broadbent. Wow. And I saw some presents. And you know what? It does look like it will be this year's Jingle Jangle. So...
What an ultimately disappointing, overblown production fest.
Which, is better than the rest of them.
Absolutely. I'm desperate for that on this. Right now, where I'm sitting, I'm desperate for it.
Yeah.
And look, you may have sensed, especially if you are coming straight from 2 weeks ago, Netflixmas 2021 Part 1, you may have sensed a change in energy, and I'll tell you why that is that it is a little later than we're all comfortable recording usually, just due to the three of our schedules working out. I've got a pretty bad headache. And also the 3 movies that we have to talk about today. It's the worst Netflixmas ever, man. Like this is I know we're only going to be talking about 3 on this episode, but I feel like this is maybe the lowest overall enjoyment level of any like collection.
There is so much content though. There's so much content.
Yeah, but we don't want the episode to go for too long, do we? Though I am still fairly tired.
Like we've seen probably I don't know if I'd call any of these the worst Netflixmas movies we've ever seen.
I would 100%. I would.
Well, I think maybe the
Recency bias? Are you going to accuse me of recency bias?
I'm saying that Holiday Rush was so unnotable that it's disappeared from your memory. So you're like, yeah, this is the worst one.
Wait, which one was that?
Exactly.
Oh, the radio one.
Yeah.
The radio one.
From 2019. I think that what I'm saying is like, out of, and I'm not saying this is that 2021 is the worst Netflixmas, but I'm saying out of the single episodes we've done that have been a package of so many movies, this is maybe the least happy I've ever been.
The worst package.
Yeah.
The worst grouping.
The worst present, if you will.
Indeed.
Yeah. This is really... is this the end of Netflixmas?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Well, I thought I might try and leave a cliffhanger for next year.
Oh, right.
I didn't want to do it. Like last year, we had a very serious discussion on pod about not doing this, but every year it rolls around, and someone who's never told me they loved the Netflixmas episodes before will be like, "Oh my god, I love it when you guys
can't
do
wait for
Netflixmas."
Yeah.
Great. So the money's working.
Yeah.
I'm like, guys, in the Discord, there's a whole section that is like doesn't include you guys, and every year I'm like, guys, I really, really want to get back on the podcast. Please, can one of you tell AJ that you love it?
But yeah, because this year we've got this weird their biggest movie they took off Netflix in New Zealand, and there's like 4 movies that are coming out after this episode is released. So between this episode's release and Christmas.
Well, like between the 22nd and the 24th of December.
Yeah.
Like they've stacked them in like the final days before Christmas, which is like, people have other stuff to do on those days.
You got a Christmas show.
So who's going to watch that? Who's going to watch any of these movies after Christmas? You've got a limited time space. We've talked about this already. Yeah. Okay, so usually the way we do this is we go 3, 2, 1, and we all say what we thought the worst of this bunch was. We can do that. I feel like I'm going to have a different answer to the two of you, but I also don't. It's
enough.
Yeah.
Well, we need to do it. It is tradition.
Yeah, it is tradition.
Okay, it is tradition.
All right. So the worst film of the 3 we've watched, which to remind you is not A Boy Called Christmas. It's A Castle for Christmas, Single All the Way, and David and the Elves.
Mm-hmm.
So 3, 2, 1.
David and the
Elves. A Castle for Christmas. David and the Elves is a colouring book. Whereas A Castle for Christmas is my mum staying to talk to someone at the supermarket when I just want to go home and play PlayStation. Right? This is what I knew this would happen. I'm happy to talk about A Castle for Christmas. That's just my reasoning. It's like one is like one lights up something in my brain, the other one doesn't, and that's the bare minimum I ask.
I would say A Castle for Christmas is at least still a movie.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to talk about David and the Elves first.
Yeah,
because
a film which Jeremy finished on the way here.
I'll just correct you there, Jeremy. It's actually called DAVID and the Elves.
So thank you for correcting me.
Yeah,
That's so
Jeremy,
important.
You bigot.
Yes, but in the way that we watched it, it's called David and the Elves. Because that's the quality of the overdubbing of the original Polish.
Yeah, it would be a lot funnier if we could see your mouth.
Yeah.
And it had like a bad lip sync.
It's always funnier when you can see my mouth. So David and the Elves, I just want to point this out, it's like if people can cast their minds back to last year's Netflixmas.
Thank you.
It's like if Christmas Crossfire and one of the other shitty ones had a baby. It's like it's more to do with Christmas than Christmas Crossfire, but it has exactly the same, just like weird
being
like,
in a different language.
But it's not the language. It's like it's the entire sensibility of a culture. Like it's a
No, it's not their language I have an issue with. It's their whole fucking shebang.
It's like there's something that's just, and the thing is, because it's a different culture and a different language, I'm not sure if it's just jarring because it's a poorly made movie.
Yeah, you're like, do the Poles think this is bad?
Yeah. Do the Poles think this is a good movie? And I think, I'm open to it, but my goodness, this is just, it's not just poorly made. It is truly disturbing.
It's poorly made.
It is truly disturbing what this movie does and what it's about.
Yeah.
What is it about? Yeah. Okay. Who wants to take it?
So I'll try and do this again. I'll try and do a quick précis.
Précis! Ring the bell! Précis time!
This movie centers the titular David of this movie is a young boy who lives in a little village in Poland with his extended family that starts with Christmas, big family Christmas, lots of traditions that are delivered by the aunties and uncles and grandma and grandpa and stuff like that. And near the end of Christmas Eve celebrations, which are sort of very ritualized and very sort of warm and loving, David and his father are outside, and his father is obviously trying to sort of whip up the Christmas fervor, and he goes, I'll point out to you, there's Santa's sleigh. Can you see it? It's invisible, but can you see Santa's sleigh, and can you see Albert the elf? And the little boy goes, yes, I can see them. And it just so happens that at that moment, Santa and this horrendous self-involved elf called Albert, who has been named Elf of the Year 5 years running, are actually flying through the sky, and Albert the elf sees David waving at him and thinks, oh, he can see me, so all the humans on Earth love me, as they should, because I'm an amazing elf.
Yeah.
I'm
fucking Albert.
I do just want to say for people who haven't seen this, Jeremy, you're kind of wording this like you're pointing out flaws in the movie. This is the character's arc. The character is self/elf involved. I should just say.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just telling you the facts about the movie. I'm not actually offering any kind of critique.
This is really just a précis
at present.
AJ,
So then, with the movie fast forwards a year, and the mother and father have decided to move to Warsaw, the capital city of Poland, and to get better jobs. But it means that they're away from their extended family, and this poor boy David is kind of alone a lot of the time, and he is missing the family. He wants Christmas to be like it was, and basically his situation collides with Albert wanting to leave Elfland, or the North Pole, or whatever it is, and leave
famously the North Pole.
Yeah, thank you. Leave Santa's workshop to basically go and find out how he believes that he's beloved by people everywhere on Earth for some reason. It's never really quite explained. And he goes down, meets David because David was the boy who waved at him, and then basically has a terrible time because he finds out that no one gives a shit about elves, even though they're dressed ridiculously. He does a bunch of magic shit to David's house, and David's parents get rightly annoyed that all the things in their house are changed.
And David's dad goes through a whole Santa Claus.
Yes.
With an E situation.
Yeah, the Santa Claus arc of getting a beard for some reason, and full beard,
and being
shave it off.
I've got a beard, and well then you should shave it, and he's like, I did.
Yeah, and basically
gotta get married.
David's obsessed with getting. Albert the elf is obsessed with getting David to like him and be his friend, just prove how much he loves him. Also, at this point, Albert's magic energy meter or power meter is declining.
Wouldn't be a Christmas movie without a declining magic meter.
Exactly.
When someone points out a trope you didn't realize was a trope that's mentioned.
Santa and Mrs. Claus are super worried about Albert being losing his magic, because we find out literally 2/3 through the movie that if an elf loses all of their magic, they turn into a figurine and then ultimately disappear, which I'm just okay. And then basically, so Santa and Mrs. Claus go down, they try and find Albert. The
movie really picks up at that point.
They go down. They find out David's parents' house, but it's too late. Albert and David have gone trying to walk back to his grandparents' house in the mountains, so that because David's aware that Albert needs to be connected with the real Christmas to get his magic power back. Which they go tramping through the snow for miles and miles,
dashing through the snow,
potentially kill themselves because of exposure and hypothermia, but they don't. And then they get to the grandma's house just as David's parents and Mr. and Mrs. Claus arrive, and basically, it all turns out fine. Albert turns into a figurine, but then he realizes that in the end, it wasn't actually the power of Christmas that would save him. It was the power of him knowing that he could love other people, which was the real thing that would give him power. and everyone's happy in the end.
Before we dive into everything we hated about this movie, I would like to start off with a positive. And that is what I love about watching not just any foreign films, but particularly foreign films from like Poland or Denmark. Are these the same area of the world?
Eastern Europe and Northern.
Oh, well, whatever. I don't know what I'm
Northeastern
saying.
Europe.
What I was getting at was that I love that there's a lost in translation thing, like literally in the translation, and it means you can be watching this movie, which is expressly made for children. Like it is a children's movie, and then an hour and 20 minutes into a character will go, "Jesus Christ, it's Santa Claus!" It's like, because like, you know, along the way an expletive was translated wrong or whatever. And so you just have like random spurts of like things that are probably not appropriate for a kids movie come out, and I always enjoy when I see that happening. Yeah, that's the best thing about this movie.
Yeah, did you guys like it or?
No, I didn't like it. I thought it was you know, it was boring and bad, but there's a sinister side to it as well.
Oh, can we just get
Jeremy
into
is
this?
itching to talk about. And you're not wrong, Jeremy. I agree that this movie it feels a little like a pedophilic handbook almost.
It's a manual for grooming a child. Like it is,
and there's deep stuff to it that I'm sure you can take us through, Jeremy. But even on a surface level, there's shit like David constantly, or the Albert the elf constantly telling David he just wants you to know how much I just want you to know how much I like you. Like it's very odd, uncomfortable language that they use around like their relationship. The poster for this movie, which I'm looking at right now, is Albert the elf cradling David in his arms.
What?
It feels very like they're embracing in a cuddle, and it really it feels a lot different seeing that after watching this movie. So it's already like, and again, it might be a translation thing, that it's like the type of love that is being expressed by Albert for David does not feel like the appropriate kind of love for if this was it's not like a big brother. It doesn't feel like a big brother, little brother kind of love. It feels like it's romantic. I guess,
so as I was thinking about this, I was like, this movie, pretty much 100% of the creepiness of this movie could have been solved if the elf cast were all like 12-year-old children.
Right.
You know, if they'd cast elves like with children, as they have done in other movies, it would be totally fine, because it would be like David and Albert would just be mates, and like they learn to become like better friends, and that kind of
like
friendship.
Luca.
And it could, it could be totally like lovely and innocent and like warm, and it could remind you of childhood and the best friendships you have as a child. They have cast someone who looks like he's about 27, 28 at least as Albert.
If not 50.
Yeah. And my goodness, like it's so disturbing, because what happens is that Albert comes down and he basically it's like he's showing off to David. And David, because he has been told by his dad that elves are like this wonderful magic, it's like, he's like, wow, a real live elf. This is so incredible. So he already idolizes Albert. And Albert idolizes himself and has like this like sort of super narcissistic self-aggrandizement, which is, kind of associated with criminal behaviors in the beginning. And then like Albert does all this stuff where he like treats David really, and like he does like cheeky things, like, does magic that is specifically done to impress David and make him feel like he's really special, and no one else like gets to see the things that he's showing David, and just super grooming stuff, like telling him,
negs him as well.
Yeah, he negs him, and he's just like, I thought that everyone loved me. Do you not think I'm lovable? And almost like, blackmailing David into getting David to tell Albert how wonderful he thinks he is and stuff. It's just so like, oh my gosh. And the fact that the father sees Albert leaving the house after, and leaving his own son, like leaving David in the house by himself, and he comes in afterwards. Like, I was like, if that was me and that was one of my children, and like this like fully grown adult had come out of my house and I did not know who he was, didn't know he was going to be there, and I knew that he'd been in there with my son, I would have like chased after him and been like, what the have you been doing with my child? Like, man, it's just no one in this movie acts the way that real human parents would. It's just, man.
No, they do. That's just how it is in Poland, dude. Don't worry about
it. It's Richard, just Polish people, man.
Richard, what did you think?
I did not like the movie. I think that's a pretty fair assessment on my part. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Like, do the Poles realize how similar a lot of these elements are to the Santa Claus?
Do the Poles know?
Yeah.
And also I guess Christmas Chronicles 2?
Well, I mean, we are dealing in the same genre here, so let's cut everyone a little bit of slack. But I do think that is a valid point that, like, everything we're complaining about with the kind of pedophilic undertones to this movie, you could probably say the same thing about the Santa Claus with Tim Allen. And I think
that's his own children, though.
No, I know, but
no, there's the scene by the fireplace where the girl makes some cocoa. And, like, she's, like, 1,000 years old, but is played by a little girl. And he's like, damn, girl, you know how to make some good cocoa.
I don't remember that. But
it's weird. When you watch the movie, again, that scene will stand out to you.
The one thing I remember when we covered the Santa Claus trilogy was that because it operates, it's not a Santatheist movie. It believes, Santa is real in the universe of the film. It presents its message is like, you should never give up on your family and all this sort of thing, which only works if Santa's real, because if Santa's not real in the universe of the Santa Claus, it's about a divorced dad so desperate to get back in touch with his son that he puts on...
Dresses up as a woman?
Yeah, right.
And becomes their nanny?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's essentially the same thing, I guess, but in this it's more like it involves other children as well, because there's that scene at the park
involves
where
every child in the world.
Sitting on his lap and stuff. But anyway, a lot of that is similar here, that the only reason this is forgiven, or as presumably the filmmakers thought it to be forgiven, is because Santa's real. So of course it's innocent. But also there's Jeremy, if this happened in real life, I'd be deeply concerned about the strange man my son brought home.
There's also
but if he could prove that he was an elf, then...
and also there's secrets. There's clearly secrets they're keeping from me. Like, that's very alarming.
Yeah, there's also zero internal logic in this film about like adults and like their disbelief in Santa. But if he is real, then like the presents that they get from Santa would actually be coming from like, it's just...
I mean, that's the chestnut roasting on the open fire of Christmas movies since their inception, though. There's plenty of Christmas movies which have that problem.
Yeah, but it's in this movie it's so inelegantly done, because it's like the father is very like at the beginning very like pro Santa believing in magic and all that sort of stuff, and then all of a sudden he just isn't. And it's just like, I don't know, I just didn't buy that character transformation. It was very strange.
Sorry, David, I was just gaslighting you. There is no Santa.
The number of times that he's just like, there's no fucking magic, boy!
Again, some more of that language that probably got lost in translation.
But the one thing I would say about this movie, that like it did surprise me, that I was expecting the message at the end to be very, like, just crap and nothing. But the sort of intention around where it gets to, around what like is good about Christmas, or like what is the true meaning of Christmas, as far as what actually gets, what's his name, Albert, like back into the game and back to life and all that sort of stuff. Like, actually, the real meaning is figuring out that you love other people, that actually like you have a love in your heart for others and you want to love them. Is actually, that's a far more nuanced take than I've heard from many Christmas movies. And I was like, that's it was surprising to me how like almost like valuable that message really was. Too bad it was covered up under 10 tons of Christmas shit.
I think they fell into it, Jeremy. I think they wrote themselves into a corner and desperately tried to worm a theme out of this mess of a film they'd made, and were like accidentally made something poignant. I feel like that's more likely than
they can't have been that smart, because the rest of the movie does not bear that intelligence out.
Yeah. Funniest joke in this movie, everybody, is when Albert the elf decides, you know what, everyone should be able to get whatever they want for Christmas, and he starts using his magic to like make cars appear in front of people. And he's talking to a guy in the mall, and this guy is like, I just want to be alone on a boat on you know, in the middle of a lake, just by myself for a while, and
with
then
no
he
children.
clicks his fingers. Yeah. And so Albert clicks his fingers, and this guy appears on a boat, and he looks around, and like this feels funny to say because this is such a weak movie, but in a weaker movie, that character would go, finally. In this movie, he's terrified. He starts screaming and desperately calls his wife, and I thought that was a pretty good gag. A pretty good gag that would not be out of place in a better Christmas
And the
movie.
callback was so good as well.
Yeah.
Because later on in the movie, like literally 40 minutes later in the movie, they are like hitchhiking to get to his David's grandma's house, and they come across that guy who's on the side of a highway in the middle of the night, like trying to hitchhike his way, still trying to hitchhike his way home.
Yeah, this movie rocks, man. I love this movie.
Yeah, man. Let's talk about the next best movie.
Hey, before we do you guys know that there is a Wikipedia list of Netflix Christmas movies now?
Oh, really?
It finally happens. We no longer have... I mean, there's ones we've missed, which is concerning.
Check the editor. Is it someone on the Discord?
I'm on the Wikipedia page for David and the Elves, and at the bottom is a little box that has Netflix Christmas films and specials, and it has them ranked, categorized by year. So maybe our troubles are behind us in terms of trying to categorize these movies.
I would also love it if these podcasts became like sources for this list.
There's one we missed in 2018 called 5-Star Christmas.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Yeah.
Well, hot dog. All right, anyway.
Hot chocolate nutcracker.
3, 2, 1... A Castle for Christmas. Yeah, obviously. Yeah. So A Castle for Christmas. This is about Brooke Shields plays Sophie Brown, who's an author who her last book wasn't super well received. So especially this she killed off the male love interest. Like she writes, these Mills and Boone type books by the sound of it. And so she tries to get away from it all, so she goes to Scotland, where she is she has Scottish ancestry. And she buys this fucking castle in Dunbar, but she falls in love with the groundskeeper, played by Carrie Elwes.
Who's not Scottish.
And who also isn't actually the groundskeeper. Turns out to be the Duke of Dunbar.
Sorry, yes, he's the Duke. Her father worked as the groundskeeper.
So this movie is Holiday in the Wild from 2019, but in Scotland. Trade out one of your mum's crushes for another. Rob Lowe for Carrie Elwes. Although Carrie Elwes is like, he was your mum's crush from Princess Bride. I don't know if he sustained that status through the rest of his career. And trade out Kristen Davis for Brooke Shields.
A poor trade, I just say.
Brooke Shields, my God, she's awful in this movie.
So this again, pretty bleak, pretty bland. But I do want to start off with my favorite thing, if I may.
Be positive. I like the positivity, AJ. Keep it coming.
I think that the plot idea of an author who's written a long-running series and the movie starts after she's killed off a favorite character is a really cool idea and a really cool place to put your lead character if they were an author in your story. I was really attracted to that idea because I think there was almost something they were like, it feels like it comes from a personal place, like whoever wrote the script maybe has known this to happen to writer friends of them, and I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed literally nothing else in this movie.
This is like the very peak kind of rich white people
mums
just going and doing, like, buying a castle. Like, how fucking rich and white is that? Like, you literally don't get richer or whiter than buying a castle in Dunbar. Or Dunbar is the name of the castle, I think.
Yeah, the thing is, we talk a lot on this podcast about market segmentation.
Right.
And what's really interesting about this year's Netflixmas is that I would say this is probably the only one that we've seen that is very specifically a market segmentation movie. Like, they've really fallen off of that old trick. But this is so clearly aimed at a particular market, right? Like, it's so clearly aimed at a particular demographic of women.
My mum.
Yeah, it's aimed at, because my mum's Scottish, and I told her to watch this movie because
my mum loves like Outlander, so like I imagine your mum and my mum.
Yeah,
very much.
But my mum texted me the other day to say she, after listening to part 1, she checked out Father Christmas is Back to see if it was as bad as we said, and she discovered it was in fact worse.
Get her on the pod.
And I said, "Oh, you should check out Castle for Christmas." Don't get me wrong, it's bad, but there's people with Scottish accents in it, so you'll probably like that. And so she said she would check it out. But yeah, this is made for the demographic of this film. If we're going to do this from 2019, where we sort of see the demographic. The demographic for this film is my mum, because she'll watch it. The Scottish accents will fire these little, synapses in her brain. And she'll go, "That's familiar," and it'll be on in the background, and then she'll go, "That wasn't the worst thing I've ever seen." And that's the demographic for this movie.
I wonder, though, if the Scottish accents in this movie are too fake that your mum might actually go the other way.
You underestimate how much my mum loves to nitpick things.
But she could still love to nitpick it and not think it's a good movie, surely. Because like, and I know Carrie Elwes isn't Scottish, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the other... I feel like you can tell the actors who are and aren't actually Scottish in this movie, and I wonder if that will affect your mum's, but not my mum's, appreciation of this movie.
I also, while we're talking about demographics, I should take this point to issue an apology for last week's episode, in which I said that Princess Switch 3, Romancing the Star, was a Kate film. I've spoken to Kate in the 2 weeks since. She did not like the film. She loves the first one. But Kate, the person I work with, the straw man that we use for these films, didn't like it. So
she's invite to the podcast revoked.
Yeah, but she is. She loved us talking about her, and she thought it was very funny how you guys just immediately ripped on her despite having never met her. But that's what we're here.
That's the Popture family, guys.
That's the game, baby.
So, Kate, if you're listening to this again,
we think you're trash.
Get fucked.
And yeah, let me know what you thought of. Did you get to watch A Boy Called Christmas? Maybe you could come on at some point and give us your review of A Boy Called Christmas if you watched it before it was taken off.
I hope this irretrievably damages your working relationship with Richard.
So yeah, Castle Christmas. Like I think I got Uber Eats when this movie started.
Okay.
And it got worse from there.
Well, so because I was using I can't remember what I got, but it was something where my hands got greasy. And so I wasn't using my phone or whatever. So the first 40 minutes of this movie, I actually paid quite a bit of attention to. And then I feel like I blacked out for 40 minutes. And then I paid attention to the end
and
of
then
it.
it was still going.
Yeah, straight up.
It is a still going movie, isn't it? It gets to the party at the end and I was just like, what is your excuse for still being on?
Yeah, it grinds to a halt. And then you're like, oh, whoops. You get to a point where you're like, surely this movie is not still going. And then you're like, well, no, there hasn't been any plot advancements. It's been 10 minutes. But that's just what happens in the movie.
They've just gone for another, for whatever reason, horse ride. Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things about this is I think very similarly to Love Hard and other Netflixmas movies is I just think the trope of having your lead character be a female, like a woman who's a successful writer. I feel like there's just something about that.
It's very author insert.
Yeah, but also I think this idea that and I don't know what it is. I'd welcome any insights into this
women can't write
from the target demographic, but just the idea that a woman who writes for a living and has her sort of thoughts on a page be very successfully received, being kind of this wonderful audience surrogate for people who want to be listened to and for their ideas to be important or whatever. But it comes across as so and I think it's not helped by the fact that it's Brooke Shields, who has zero internal life coming across through her face. She is an absolute blank canvas of hey, remember what Brooke Shields used to look like? Here's someone who almost looks like that, and nothing else.
Yeah.
I'm also just going to quickly address the elephant in the room. In order to dampen the sound in my recording room, I hang up a little blanket behind me and it's just fallen down. So if the quality of sound for me and Jeremy has decreased in the last couple of minutes, that's why. But you've listened for 40 minutes, so you're probably going to stick around.
It reflects the internal insanity of Netflixmas, I think.
It reflects the hollowness of Brooke Shields' performance.
I would love to get this done in an hour. So whatever you have to say about Cast of Christmas, AJ, get it.
I'd really love to walk you guys through and cherry pick the filmography of this film's director, Mary Lambert. I'm going to tell you a couple. She's directed a bunch of films. I'm going to tell you a couple of them, right?
Yeah.
In 1989, she directed Pet Sematary, which is quite a big deal, right? The Stephen King adaptation. In 1992, she directed Pet Sematary 2, which is not a Stephen King adaptation, but a movie-only sequel to Pet Sematary, right? Skip ahead a few movies. In 2001, she directed Halloweentown 2, Calabar's Revenge, a movie we've covered on this podcast. And then jump ahead, the movie she directed before A Castle for Christmas, in 2011, she directed Mega Python versus Gatoroid.
I feel sorry for her.
This is one of the most insane filmographies. You start off with Pet Sematary was her second film. At what point do you make that right turn into eventually getting Mega Python vs. Gatoroid and A Castle for Christmas 10 years later? What has to happen to a person? Also, 75% on Rotten Tomatoes, this film.
What?
Oh, wow.
Oh, from 4 reviews, I'm guessing?
Probably. I didn't look.
I think you have to have minimum 5, actually. It'll be from 8 reviews. That's my guess. Let's just see if we can verify that, eh?
One of the things about this movie
16 reviews
is the supporting cast are doing a pretty good job. You've got Carrie Elwes and you've got Brooke Shields, who are obviously the known faces here. And then there's a supporting cast of people who are quite good character actors that, I've not seen them in anything else before. And I just feel like turning up to work every day and doing hey, I'm in a Netflixmas, I'm in a Netflix Christmas movie. This is great. I'm stoked. This is a big production. Awesome. And then having to sit there and act opposite Brooke Shields and what she's doing. It's what an insult to these people who are working their craft. It's just I am underneath this person in this film.
I'm Mary Lambert. I directed Mega Python versus Gatoroid, and you're giving me this?
Yeah. There's also a couple of like really standout like clangers in the script of this movie, like where just the things that people say have no bearing on the things that have gone before and what comes afterwards. I'm specifically thinking about the moment where Brooke Shields' character realizes that she's in love with that's right. She finds a dress in the castle that obviously belongs to someone from Cary Elway's family, because it's his family home that's been in the family for generations. And she finds this dress. She's just like, I found this dress. I'm going to wear it for the big party that we're going to do. And up until this point, they have not like admitted to one another that they love each other or they even like each other. She goes to his room. She's standing in the hallway, and she goes like, I found this dress. And he goes, you shouldn't have done that. And then they just start making out, and it's just like there's a true like kind of threat to his. There's a true threat to his voice.
Gets your mum's horny, dude.
But it's like he's sort of like introducing the conflict that's going to like sustain the rest of the tension of the movie. And you shouldn't have done that. But then it just gets absolutely thrown away, and no one says anything more about it. It's just. Oh, and there's just stuff like that all the way through the movie that it's just like, why did that get? I just don't even understand why it's in there.
Yeah. Alrighty, well, let's talk about another
3,
movie.
2, 1, single all the way.
BuzzFeed have a list for this movie. It's called 17 fan reactions to Single All the Way that prove it's the Netflix rom-com you've been waiting for. In some ways, it was the Netflix rom-com I was waiting for. In a lot of ways, it did not explicitly deliver on being the one I was waiting for. Like, I thought this looked pretty promising, but ultimately, while it may be, I'd say I probably liked Love Hard more than this.
Yeah.
It is one of the more easier watches, more fun watches, I should say.
Yeah.
I watched this with a couple of people in the room, and me yelling at the screen didn't feel as lost.
It's just immediately more interesting because it's a gay love story.
It's just different, right?
I'll say it. I'll be the one to say it. And you put in a character actress like Jennifer Coolidge, and it's just like you can have a good time. But it is like just immediately. But the interesting thing is though that it's like it does like nothing really new with like the rom-com or especially like the Hallmark ripoff Netflixmas, romantic formula. But just the fact that it's a gay romance is like, well, this is new.
Yeah.
It's just immediately slightly more interesting.
It also, by the way, stars Barry Bostwick, who shows up in a lot of these Film Franchise Fortnight adjacent movies that we watch.
Yeah.
I'll take the précis for this one because I want to criticize it as I tell you the story. Okay, so we have got our main players. First of all, the movie starts, every character's a gay man. I've never seen this before in a movie. It's insane. Every character you see...
Including Jennifer Coolidge.
No, I see as it starts, every character is a gay man. Like, before it gets to the family...
His argument's airtight, Jeremy.
He's like the main character who's Peter. He is working as like a photographer for like this fashion
social media producer.
Yeah. Everyone around him is clearly a gay man, which I just thought was very interesting because I'd never seen a movie tip. It made me feel very like, oh man, it made me feel sorry for like gay people watching movies where everyone's straight. It was a looking in the reflection kind of moment for me, and maybe the most profound thing I got from this movie.
It was was it the Gale gaze?
The Gale gaze, or
just
very
the male
good.
Gaze? Sorry to Chris Parker and Eli Mathewson, fellow Little Empire podcasters.
One of whom I'm
pretty sure don't know we exist. So Peter is the social marketing guy, and he lives with his best friend Nick, who is also a gay guy. And at the start of the movie, he is dating a doctor, and Nick,
and
Peter's
the doctor
best friend,
is a gay guy.
The doctor's a gay guy.
No, who knows?
Peter's best friend discovers that this doctor he's dating, who he's already invited home for Christmas, is actually married to a woman, right?
With children, yeah.
Yeah. And so this is when what feels like is going to be the central story engine of the movie comes in, but then is backtracked on and then later embraced, which was very confusing, is that he goes, well, I've already told my family that I'm bringing someone home for Christmas. Nick, will you pretend to be my boyfriend and come home for Christmas with me? And I go, okay, in my head, I'm like, okay, I recognize this story. This is
from Love Hard.
This is from Love Hard. They go back, they pretend to be boyfriends, they eventually fall in love for real. What I didn't know, and what is quickly revealed, is that the family know Nick and have known Nick for years as Peter's best friend.
And have been shipping them hard.
But this, I feel, was a strange left turn to take this trajectory. I think the story works better when the family don't know the fake love interest, right?
It's very funny, though, that it's just like, Mom, Dad, this is my boyfriend. Like, no, we know Nick. Nick, come on in. What's up?
Exactly. And so it's the situation where it's like the movie of a guy of your son telling you that their lifelong best friend is now their lover is like an interesting place to explore in and of itself. And I'm like, okay, this is a really interesting wrinkle to throw into this movie. As soon as they get to the parents' house, the jig is up, and Nick it doesn't pretend to be his boyfriend. Doesn't even consult Peter because Peter's mum wants to set him up on a date. And I'm like, okay, so they're ditching the storyline almost immediately. That's very strange.
And also, at the beginning, I thought that the tension was going to be that he was bringing the doctor home, and the whole thing, because Nick he works as a task rabbit, so I thought it was going to be this thing of like the family was so in love with the idea that his boyfriend was like a doctor. Oh my gosh! And then they had to get used to the fact that like actually it's okay for him to be in love with someone who doesn't really have like a stable income and a job. It's more important love than sort of this kind of career impressiveness.
Totally. The point being is that this movie, in its first 20 minutes, burns through plot ideas for what could be a full movie, right? And then he goes on this date that his mum sets him up with, and the guy is great. His name is James, and he's a great guy.
Played by Luke McFarlane, who has been the lead like love interest in like 18 Hallmark Christmas movies.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
So now we're in a movie where it's about a guy who's gone back he lives in LA, he's gone to New Hampshire for the holidays, and he's fallen in love with a New Hampshirean, like a small town person who, you know, the joke being there's not a lot of gays in small towns, right? And so now it's a movie about a guy who has to decide, does he want to move back home or stay in LA with his job? And then and I'm not gay, and I probably have a pretty bad gaydar, so maybe this is on me. Halfway through the movie, they start sowing the seeds that no, Nick and Peter actually are secretly in love with each other. Something which I thought was cool that they weren't, because it's like gay people can be friends without being romantically interested, right? And it's like, oh, what a cool way to normalize it and show
something
it.
that is explicitly said by the mother character, who says, I've read in a book that it's okay, and that straight people shouldn't just assume that because two gay men are friends with each other that they should just hook up, because it's okay for two guys to be friends with each other and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And so it's almost like we're coached as an audience through that.
Yeah, you're coached into being more woke for the movie to be like, but... anyway,
actually, I just want to fucking do that.
So then it becomes a movie about, and I should say in the background there's like this Christmas pageant thing that's developing with Jennifer Coolidge, which I'll get to in a second. But then it becomes a movie about the family have decided that Nick and Peter belong together, which happens in The Princess Switch 2, and it really pissed me off because it's one of those, this is actually none of your fucking business.
Yeah.
Kind of, what a weird thing to do, to like mingle in your relative's love life because you believe they should be with someone. What a strange thing that is only accepted in movies, you know? Like, if this happened in real life, it'd be considered toxic behavior. Anyway, it starts to look like Peter and Nick are going to get together, and then there's a mention of where Peter says to James, who's the other guy, who I was on Team James, I should say, where he basically says like, "Oh well, I've been thinking about moving back to New Hampshire, sort of for you, but you're real hot and could be a model because he photographs him for a modeling thing. Maybe you should move to LA." And then there's this whole thing where it feels like it's going to be this interesting, like, everybody gets each other's ending, where one of them stays in New Hampshire, one of them goes back to LA, this kind of thing you didn't expect. And I don't know if they pick up on James's storyline after that, but Nick and Peter eventually get together and decide to stay in New Hampshire. A message that I ideologically disagree with, not that they're two men being together. I love that. I support that. I'm getting in front because I used ideological difference, and I know that's a buzzword for this kind of thing. I just can't support the idea of...
You just can't support that's like the other thing.
No, I can't support the idea of moving from a big city to a small town. I think that's a horrible message to tell people. I think it's
AJ,
that is never
you
a good
moved from
thing.
Auckland to Christchurch, so apparently
It's
you
still a
do
city.
support it.
It's still a city. I don't live in the middle of nowhere, and also for a long time in Auckland, I did live in a small subsection.
All
of
right,
Auckland.
here he goes.
Anyway, I thought this movie was incredibly muddled and as I've sort of pointed out and going over the plot, like it feels like it's got about 6 or 7 different ideas for what it could be, and all it can stand on is like, okay, but it's the gay version of this rom-com you've seen before, which is a good idea, but pick one. You know what I'm saying?
It's really interesting because, like, I didn't think it was as muddled as you do. Like, because when they introduced the Luke, the James character, like the hot guy from the local town, like I just knew that he was the James Marsden of this movie, right? Like, I
guess
knew
I'm not
that
used
he
to
was
the James Marsden like character arc, because like they don't even make him a bad guy. He's quite a cool guy.
No, and like
James,
it's absolutely the James Marsden, like from The Notebook, and
Superman Returns.
Yeah, and also X-Men. You know, when he's Cyclops.
And he's the cuck.
Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah,
Cinema's greatest cuck.
He's the guy who makes all the sense in the world, but it's just not right. It's just not love. And I just always knew that it was going to be Nick, because it's like in these movies, they when especially because there are two daughters, so they're like the main character's extended family, like his sisters, both have children, and the older nieces are just like the Greek chorus on behalf of the audience, telling you that he needs to get together with Nick, and they like and they even like go behind and they go to Nick and they say, Nick, what are you doing? You need to start torpedoing this dating relationship that this guy's having with James, because you're the guy that he's supposed to be.
You're the Hugh Jackman or Brandon Routh or Ryan Gosling or Ben Schwartz.
Exactly. And so, and Nick's like, well, yeah, I think I am. And like, so, I don't know. I thought it was a pretty typical rom-com where there's someone who's set up to be like the perfect, like, but vanilla and kind of empty vessel for the person to fall in love with, but it's actually the more complicated but ultimately right for the person guy who's going to get the guy in the end.
Yeah, I guess so. I guess that's what the movie wants you to take away from it. I just supported James more than I did Nick,
I just thought he was hotter. I really thought he was...
I thought the chemistry was better. And it is interesting, isn't it, that it's like, do I stay in New Hampshire for James? And it's like, no, but I do stay in New Hampshire just for Nick.
But it was never about staying for James, because he wanted to stay in New Hampshire because of his family. That was like his whole thing. It's like, now that I'm here with my family, I realize how much I miss them. And I really want to be a plant guy. I want to be a plant guy. I'm a plant guy. It's like almost, it's hewing so closely to the I'm about the Beatles sister from Father Christmas is Back. It's just like, I'm just really into plants, guys, okay? The other thing that you sort of mentioned a little bit of, but like, Jennifer Coolidge did not need to be in this movie at all. Like, there is literally, she makes no difference to the plot whatsoever. There were enough other side characters that she did not have to be introduced. Like, the person who was actually running the play could have been the older sister or even the younger sister who was already involved. It's just they just sort of like wheel in Jennifer Coolidge to come and be Jennifer Coolidge in this movie. And to be honest, I'm not mad about it, because it was amazing. But it was very much like she's an extra part to this movie that like really felt like she was sort of hanging on just by the quality of her outlandish performance.
I think part of that is that in the similar way to you see other actors get used when their meme star is rising.
Yeah.
I think in the last year, Jennifer Coolidge has gone from being like an actress you might recognize in a few things to like people know her name and people know what,
White Lotus did a lot of that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, and I'm reading on the Wikipedia page, it says that the writer wrote the character of Aunt Sandy with Jennifer Coolidge in mind, which is like, no shit, because there's even a part in it where Aunt Sandy, Jennifer Coolidge's character, is talking about her, like the gay people in her life, and she's like, they just seem to love me, which is, that's true in real life. And so it feels like this is it feels weird to call it a Jennifer Coolidge.
Wink.
Yeah, it feels weird to call it a Jennifer Coolidge vehicle because she's not needed in the film, but at the same time it is because she's Jennifer Coolidge. The last thing, and I should have started with this because we've been starting with positives, but this wasn't entirely terrible as the other two were, so I feel like it's all good.
It was terrible.
But the best thing I can say about this movie is it's some of the best casting I've seen in a movie in a long time in terms of casting family members, because first of all, Jennifer Coolidge, I knew she was in this movie, and when what's her name, Kathy Najimy, when she showed up in the movie and she's like in a wide shot, I was like, is that Jennifer Coolidge? Because she plays her sister. They look like sisters. This is like Boromir Faramir thing from Lord of the Rings. That thing where it's like they look so good as sisters together. They definitely look related. As does you pointed this out when I mentioned this to you before, Richard.
Jennifer Robertson, who's Jocelyn Shit in Schitt's Creek.
Right.
She's like their daughter. She's
Kathy Najimy's daughter.
Yeah,
and she also looks related to her and Jennifer Coolidge.
But the weird thing is that she's like, Kathy Najimy is only like 12 years older than this actress who's playing her daughter, and it's like, that
happens all the time, dude.
Happens in real life too.
Malcolm in the Middle, the guy who plays Malcolm and the guy who plays Reese are like the same age. In fact, I think Frankie Muniz is older than Justin Bieber.
Yes, but they're brothers.
Okay. So when boys do it, it's okay. All right. That is Netflixmas 2021, everybody. I've had a horrible time. How have you guys found it?
Yeah, I'm so tired. I'm going to go to bed.
Okay.
I've had a great time, guys.
Do you want to tell people where they can find us? I'm glad to hear you've had a good time, Jeremy. But yeah, this is it for Netflixmas for the year. Sorry we couldn't cover what may or may not be the best one. And sorry we couldn't cover the ones that haven't come out yet. That's on Netflix. Write to your congressman and tell them to write to Netflix. To your
Santa Claus.
And
it feels right that this should be miserable. I don't know. It feels like it comes with the season. Anyway, if you want to find us, thank you for listening, everybody. Let us know what you thought of the Netflixmas movies this year, including the ones we can't watch. Check us out, Cult Popture, on all the social medias, mainly Twitter and Instagram, preferably. That's where to find us. That's the best place to find us. But you can also join our Discord, which there is a link to in the show notes. And you can subscribe to our various YouTube channels. And also join our Patreon if you want to support us. We just got our 80th patron this week. How crazy is that? 80 people.
Whack.
I remember when you were all the way down at 69.
That was 3 months ago. So if you want to join the Patreon, there is a link in the show notes, www.patreon.com/cultpopture. And speaking of the Patreon, we are going to
do a post-credit scene.
Move into the post-credit scene, which is supported by a Patreon. As soon as this music ends, ka kite, everybody.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Post-credit scene time. Here it is.
Welcome
Jeremy's
on to the post-credit
scene.
Again. This is a segment. Jeremy, what is the post-credit scene? Do you want to
this truly can't be worse than last time. I have to believe.
This is a segment at the end of each episode where if you donate $5 or more over at patreon.com/cultpopture, you get to give us something to talk about in this, the post-credit scene. Richard, will you tell me, please, who is it from and what is their post-credit scene?
All right, today is the 99th post-credit scene we've done. And this comes to us from Marabara, who says, "What's your least favorite part of your favorite genre? Mine is gender essentialism in martial arts movies." This is a great question, and it's one that I, if I had time to really properly sit down and think, but genre is one of those things that I find it difficult. I just signed up for something recently, and it made me like tick my favorite genres, and I was like, I don't know, like fucking just whatever.
Good movies,
and but I will say one that it pops up in a lot of different genres, and I've talked about this before, but I hate it's quite frequently in zombie films is when I pointed out, but the period of time where the characters haven't worked out what's happening, and it's like you as the audience know that this is the premise of the film, and you're just waiting for them. They go, no, surely that can't be it, and you get it in superhero movies or like any kind of otherworldly, sort of powers,
extraordinary elements.
Yeah, there's always characters that don't believe it. It's like, I know you're going to come around to it,
like an understanding lag.
Yeah, the understanding lag. That's a great way of putting it. So my least favorite is the understanding lag. Jeremy, AJ, do you guys have any?
Jeremy's one, because Jeremy's favorite genre is Christmas movies, and his least favorite trope is when Santa exists in the world of the film, and yet the parents don't believe in them. And the question being, who delivers Santa's presents? Do they just
absolutely not? No. My least favorite thing about Christmas movies is when one of the lead characters has terrible hair.
I like that pertains only to Christmas movies.
No, I don't know. I struggle to think of a genre that I would define myself as like really loving.
Musicals?
Oh, fuck, yes. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Richard.
And the thing you hate is pretty much all of them.
Oh, just, no, music. What I hate is when you get a musical where they cast people who they think are going to get like punters into seats and sell tickets, but cannot sing to save their lives. And so they basically, they sacrifice the very essence of the genre just to try and guarantee. And I'm like, why make a musical then? Why make a musical if you don't want to have people actually singing?
Do you think there is a certain trade-off though? There's like a certain amount that you can forgive for getting a better performance.
Yes, like I'm fine with not getting some kind of totally obscure, like amazing musical theater performer that no one's ever heard of from like Chicago in the Chicago theater scene to come and do your like, your lead character. But like actually, why not invest in someone who's already proven themselves, has a bit of a name for themselves in musical theater?
Do you have an example of a performance in a musical where their singing wasn't the best, but
Ewan McGregor in Moulin Rouge is, I think, the perfect example of where an actor who's at the sort of very limits of his limited ability to sing, and also a character for whom that makes sense. Because in the movie, the rest of them are all performers, but he is the everyman, like, who doesn't like, and his singing is coming about like he's straining because he wants to make it into that world. Like he's coming from the outside, wanting to be part of the world of the performers, and he's trying and it's all coming out of his heart and his love for Satine, like his desperation for Satine. And so the strain on his voice when he's going for the top notes and stuff like that, yes, it's not as great as other people, it's not perfect, but he's really good. And that's why when they put Moulin Rouge onto Broadway and they cast Aaron Tveit, who is an incredible tenor and absolutely perfect, he sings Come What May in the key that Ewan McGregor sang it in, and like Ewan McGregor's like straining to get the top notes of Come What May, and Aaron Tveit in like the sort of musical trailer for that when they were putting it onto Broadway, I was just like, this is the most boring version of Come What May ever, because he's just easily sailing up and beyond the top notes. And it's like clinical the way he's singing it.
That's a great answer. And so, AJ, I guess that leaves you to give us the funny answer to end on.
Well, I just wanted to say, like, it's a very generous review of Ewan McGregor not being a good singer. You say, you're like, no, it works because of the character, and Ewan McGregor's like, yeah, I was going for that. I don't know what genre you would call this, but it's like coming of age for adults. And in fact, coming of age anyway, I really like. But it's not strictly teenagers, like life
Garden
stories.
State.
Garden State's a great example. I hate when things like that have main characters cheat on their loved ones, like cheat on their wife or cheat on their girlfriend or boyfriend.
It's a big Netflix thing.
It's a big Netflix thing, and it ruins characters, and I maybe this is a little naive of me. I don't think this happens as much as these kinds of movies present it as happening.
Wait till you get to the real world.
I know that's what I'm setting myself up to be naive on. But it's just like, I remember there was Friends from College was an old Netflix series that came out maybe 5 years ago. And I remember being like, this looks like it could be a cool dramedy kind of thing. And like, it's like Keegan Michael Key and Kobe Smulders are secretly sleeping together, and that's where their story starts. And I just hate it. I think it's so... I don't understand why these personal dramedies can't move past infidelity.
It's like it's their only idea for
it's a lazy moral tension.
Judd Apatow does it a lot, I think, and that's my answer. I hate characters you're supposed to like cheating on. You know, there are exceptions, but mostly I hate it.
Yeah.